Whether it's a 1-year forecast or a 16,000-month forecast, Jeff Robson, founder of Access Analytic, shows you how you can build this in Excel and have those months change dynamically. A fully automated, auto-updating financial model. Let's go. So welcome, Jeff. How are you?
Fabulous. How are you?
Am I excellent?
Excellent, you might say.
Excellent. So, Jeff, give a quick background. Then, what's your story? How do you come to be? Who are you, and how do you come to be where you are?
Sure. All right. So, principal analyst and founder of Access Analytic. So, Access Analytic is a consulting and training business based in Perth, Western Australia. Been working with Wind for 15 years now in this business.
A long time.
And specialize in financial modeling, Power BI data analytics. So there you go. That's a shortened version.
Excellent. So what are you going to share with us, Jeff?
Well, we have a 3-way dynamic arrays financial model. So this is something I've not really seen too many people do. Maybe other people have already come across this, but something I started doing a while ago and then stopped because it got too hard, and then I came back to it, and some of the new functions have made things a little easier, and now been able to complete a full 3-way model.
And what's the benefits of a dynamic array version?
Funny you should ask. Well, the main thing is that the formulas extend and copy themselves. So in a normal, financial model, if you want to add new periods or you want to add new products or new employees, whatever it is, you would need to manually extend those formulas and copy and paste them and so on. So here you just change, for instance, the number of periods, or you type a new product into a table, or you add a new employee into the table, and everything gets carried throughout the rest of the model. So you don't need to do anything to the model itself to make it extend.
Awesome. So can you do us a quick demo and then talk us through some of the concepts?
Sure, certainly can. All right, one moment, I'll share my screen. All right, so what I've got in this model is it's just a very simple financial model. So I haven't tried to make it super complex, just really to illustrate the concept of using dynamic arrays. So I've got some setup information here around, what different inputs are for the model, discount rates and loan terms and all that sort of stuff. Number of periods is probably the key one, because once we change this to a different number, it will automatically extend. So I'll change it back to what I had previously. If I scroll down a little bit, we've got some tables down here. These are all of the products that this particular company is selling. Got a few staff in here. And essentially what we do is, loan schedule, and then some CapEx and some spending that we're doing in this model. I've also incorporated the opening balances down here. So we've got the, just the various opening balances for the balance sheet numbers. So what I've done is taken that information and put that into a financial model. And in here, just using dynamic arrays. So all of the formulas for this model that do all the calculations are in this column. So there are actually no formulas written in any columns to the right of this. So all of these are generated using dynamic arrays. So dynamic array functions, if you've not used them before, these are different to the old Excel array functions. We had the curly brackets and did Control-Shift-Enter and all that kind of stuff, and annoying everybody. These are far better. You just enter your normal functions, press Enter, and the formulas extend, or spill is the new term, to copy themselves either across and or down. So, this is one example here. It's a sequence function. It says basically generates a list of numbers, one row, this many columns, starting at 0 and incrementing by 1. So, there's a formula in this column here and in this cell, but then all the ones to the right are in. You can see they're all grayed out, which just means that those are spilling across to the right. So if I go across to the end of that cell, into that row, you can see it stops at period 60.
And if you type something into one of those cells, Jeff, or can you delete one of those formulas?
Nope, certainly can't. But you can certainly type something in, yes. So if I type something in there, the whole thing stops working and I get a spill error on the left-hand side. And then basically, because everything feeds off that, I've just wrecked my entire model. As soon as I delete that, everything comes back again. So if you've got data in there, obviously it's not going to be able to spill properly. So it will stop at that point.
Cool.
So what I've done is I've got some, a whole bunch of formulas at the top here, which are spilling across, generating my dates off those sequence of period numbers, calculating the calendar, financial years, months, periods, all this sort of stuff. And then I've just got a row here that just has a bunch of ones going across, and I can use those if I just want to repeat something going across the page as well. Over here, in addition to these functions that we've got here, like sequence and so on, you'll see what I've done is when I want to reference a formula which is spilling across, I put a little hash at the end of it. So G6 hash means that cell obviously spilled all the way across to the right.
Yeah.
Or it could have been spilled down, depending on which way the formulas are spilling. All right, so that's my kind of basic setup for this. What I've done over here as well is, you can see in here, I'm actually just referencing a column of a table. So I've got some currencies coming through, I've got some foreign exchange rates and so on, which are all basically either just referencing a column in a table. In this case, I'm sorting that column in the table. So if I was to add new things into that table, obviously I'd just get more data appearing, at the bottom down here. And then I've used Wynn's favorite formula in the world, the XLOOKUP function, to pull in the relevant rates.
Absolutely.
Pleased to know this model has extensive use of XLOOKUP.
Excellent work.
And then then we've used array functions again, spilling across and down. So because I'm referencing the FX rate on the side here, this one spills down. Because I'm referencing the period number at the top here, it spills across. So this one formula spills across and down to generate all of those values for me. So quite clever in the way that these formulas work. Anyway, we're not going to go through every formula, I think, in the model. It'd be too much, but I just want to kind of highlight some of the things. We can make a copy of this available to people if they'd like to download it and have a play with it. If I scroll down here, there's all this kind of pricing, setup, sales information. And these are all working essentially the same way. So they're all generating values which spill across and down by using references to cells that are spilling down on the left and cells that are spilling across up the top. When I come down here, again, just more multiplication of cells and so on. Again, generating a whole table of numbers. When I get down to the bottom here, to add things up, it's a little bit tricky. It's a lot easier than it used to be. But as you can see here, I've used the BYCOL function here. So this basically gives me this entire array referenced by column. And then it feeds a column out of this into my lambda function, which pulls the column value out of it. Is fed the column by the BYCOL function, and then I do a sum on that column, and this then will spill automatically across to the end of...
I'm hoping at some point they combine those two to make it easier.
I know, it really should be easier again.
Yeah, you have to use BYCOL with lambda, and it's not intuitive
just messy.
at all. Yeah,
I know.
But it's, like you say, it was better than the Mamalt.
Better than Mamalt, which was just ridiculous. It's stupidly hard to figure out and understand and write in the first place. But, it'd be nice if you could just say equals, sum, and then just put, this one, reference. But if I do that, I get sum of the entire array, which is not a well.
Yeah, or even just sum BYCOL and reference not need the lambda thing. That'd be nice, but...
I mean, obviously you could write your own with lambda, but it's just unnecessary work, I think.
Yeah. Cool.
Anyway, so that was relatively easy to put together. The all the stuff that we had for the P&L or cash flow, you could think of it that way. So you see down here, these all kind of work exactly the same way. When I come down to staff, I've got a slightly different one here in that it's processing stuff from the staff table. So on the left-hand side, I've got everyone's positions, start dates, end dates, salaries, whatever. And then again, another table to make people start and stop in the right locations, at the right periods. So because not everyone starts at the beginning of the model period, I've got some people on purpose, starting, halfway through.
Yeah.
So, and then also finishing partway through as well. So I didn't want to have everybody automatically, starting and stopping at the relevant time or at the same times and so on.
And that could be revenue streams kicking in at a certain point, or costs, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, same sort of concept.
So lots of different things. So I wanted people to start and stop in the right place. So unfortunately, the AND function and the OR functions, they don't spill. So I've had to kind of write a little bit of a, people would recognize, or some people may recognize these kind of functions, but, you're testing whether things are in the right places or not, just by using essentially these little tests, which result in either a true or a false. So true is a 1 and a false is a 0. So you multiply them together and that becomes essentially an AND function.
Yeah,
it's a little bit weird doing that sort of stuff, but probably not too tricky. If I scroll down a bit further, a couple other things. The rest of the P&L was pretty straightforward. If we get down to the balance sheet stuff is a little bit tricky as well because you can't refer to a previous period. So using these dynamic array functions, so you can't refer to a previous column or something like that. So what we've ended up doing with these ones, if I just scroll down to my balance sheet workings down the bottom here, this ends up being a little bit unusual and perhaps not what you might expect in a function to generate a opening and closing balance. So these things, people call them a corkscrew calculation because the formula of the data comes in here, flows down here, and then the closing balance here obviously becomes the opening balance in the next period. So you kind of get this corkscrew effect. So going across the page. So to make that happen, what I've essentially done here is used a bunch of SUMIF functions, or SUMIFs. And I'm looking at the period numbers to make sure that I'm getting my opening balance plus all of the additions less all of the subtractions up to the relevant point. So it seems a little bit strange to have to do this, but essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking my opening balance here. Let me go, like to take this as an example. So my opening balance comes from this cell over here, which is just generated with the next lookup, looking at the debtors from my opening balances on my setup page. So pulling in the opening balance here, adding up all of the additions to date, so all of my credit sales to date. So I'm just defining, there's my period number coming from row 6, my additions coming from the particular row and subtractions coming from a different row. And then my result is my opening balance plus all of my additions up to the period number -1. So all of my additions up to the period number -1, and all of my subtractions up to the period number -1 as well. Okay. So essentially it's kind of generating an opening balance and generating a closing balance. The closing balance works very similarly, except instead of the period number -1, it's the actual period number in that case. So it's a little bit, as I say, almost the same, but just working slightly differently. So pick up all of the additions, all of the subtractions, and that generates a closing balance. So it's kind of a bit of a roundabout way of having to generate an opening and a closing balance. I mean, you could effectively, just generate a closing balance because really this one and this one are kind of just here for show almost. But the closing balance is the key one because that obviously then feeds into my balance sheet. And that's the cell that is referenced in the balance sheet linking back to this particular row.
Yeah.
So a little bit kind of crazy, a little bit crazy way of having to do an opening and a closing balance. The stuff in the middle is pretty straightforward because I'm just kind of linking to, the relevant rows for my sales number. In here, what I'm doing here is, again, a little bit of an unusual calculation using the ifs function here. So, which just basically allows us to do multiple, essentially nested ifs, I suppose. So if my period is 0, and I've also, this essentially allows me to do an OR calculation here by adding the two together. So if you want to do you could multiply the two together, these two tests. So if I want to OR, I just add the two together. So again, a little bit of a kind of an unusual way of having to do a function which will then spill across. But allows me to, if I'm in the first period, or if I'm my period number is less than my debtor terms, then put a 0, because I can't refer back to what credit sales need to be paid down in that month. If we are at the month number, then we pick up the opening balance, and if we've gone beyond the period number, then we do the pick up essentially the value from the month before. So that's how I'm getting the $1 million here. This is how I'm getting the 1,041,000, which comes from that cell. So kind of a bit of mucking around to make this work, but once it sort of required a little bit more thinking than what you would typically do in a financial model. Normally you just go, this cell equals the previous one, like it's really simple. But here we kind of got to make it all just automatically copy across. We've got to do a bit more mucking around.
And really, that sort of period number row on row 6, that's core to a lot of this, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's why as soon as you muck that up, the entire model stops working. And we get errors just throughout the entire model. All right, so all these are kind of working in much the same kinds of ways, those opening and closing balances. Down here for depreciation, I ended up just bringing in the entire table in its. So this is just, linking to a column in a table, bringing in that table, all the data from each of those. And then over here, just again, some tests essentially multiplied by each other to say, are we in the depreciable period? So between the start period and the end period numbers. So if we are, then we pick up this amount divided by the useful life. And divided by the number of months per year.
So if you go back into that setup sheet, and in order to fit this on the screen, maybe you go, just change the periods to 8.
Sure.
Will we just see, so we just then end up seeing just 8 months worth in the model without having to do any rework whatsoever?
Correct.
Cool. And then you change it back to your 10, 12, 24, 32, whatever, and it just goes
anything less than 16,000 roughly, and you'll be fine. Yes.
Put 16,000 in.
I could do.
Will it keel over?
I press enter. I'm just waiting for it to recalculate the model. I haven't tested this. I don't know how long it's going to take.
Especially
we should have done that before, didn't we?
Yeah. Is it actually saying calc anywhere? Is it actually doing a calculate?
I did press enter. Oh, there we go. Oh, there you go.
Is it running? Okay, it said 16,000.
Yeah. So now if we go all the way across to column,
that's not going to pick it across. Is it gone 16?
Yeah, it's gone 16,000. There's column 16,000. You see that on row 16.
Beautiful.
How crazy is that? So there you go. Now, when you copy across, obviously I haven't got the formatting extended that far, so you do lose the formatting with dynamic arrays. They copy the formulas without the formatting. Also a little bit annoying. It'd be nice if they fix that up at some point as well. Listening Microsoft. But it's
okay. You might want to set that back to.
Yeah, probably useful. Let's change it back.
But it's amazing that it can handle that. And the speed, because you're not actually writing that many formulas. It can compute it in that sort of array world, and it won't die.
No, it doesn't die. It does the whole model in 16,000.
Wow. 16, okay. Awesome.
So yes, so what I was saying with the depreciation, where was it? Depreciation.
Sorry, I distracted you.
That's right. So we'll just basically copy across, and you see depreciation starts in the right place and then also finishes in the right place. If I scroll across here, I have depreciation also finishing, because I've stopped at column 60. Anyway, if I extend this beyond column 60, you'd see it stopping at column 62 in this case, period 62. And then I've got another little by column to add up all the depreciation expense, and then a SUMIFS to give me the cumulative again. So again, you can't just say equals the previous cell plus the one above, because again, that won't spill across. So I've used SUMIFS to give me the cumulative. So some of the stuff in here for the loan calcs will work the same kind of way to give me, my loan period starting and stopping in the right month. That's this one here. So it's 1 if the loan has started, 0 if the loan hasn't started, or if we're outside the loan period. And then I've got the loan balance coming in, the payment being calculated just by calculating just using the PMT function, and putting that against the loan period, so it will automatically start and stop my loan payments in the right place, and then interest and principal can be calculated from those as well. Again, another SUMIFS to calculate my closing balance. So my opening balance is another SUMIFS again. So a lot of kind of
that sort of
just a little bit
just using
messing around. Yeah.
Offset sort of one-off period.
Yep.
Okay, nice. I like
so
it.
I wish there was a simpler way, but if anyone's got a simpler way, all ears. But
put some comments.
Yep, absolutely.
Let us know.
A couple other things I'll just mention in here. Down the bottom here, I've got a little table which is also automatically generated, which gives me a year-by-year summary. So you want to sum up, just to generate a summary of what are the key numbers. Maybe you want to do a chart or something like that. You could easily do a chart of this to give you, what your key numbers were, ratios, calculations, whatever, profitability, etc. So there's a summary of my little, of my entire model there. And then I also, on the side here, just again using dynamic arrays, did a little NPV, kind of like a what-if function, I suppose, down here, to say, well, what would happen if you had an initial investment of this much and you had these as discount rates? What would your NPV look like across the different combinations of those? So it's essentially like a data table, I guess you could think of it in those terms.
Yeah. And those will just, the year will just expand out again if you add more periods.
Yes, this year over here, if I change that back to 16,000, we'd have 16,000 divided by 12, whatever that equals number of years. So, yes.
At least 1,000.
That would be a lot. Let's just put it
a lot of years. Yeah,
yes. It's a very long-term financial model. One last thing I'll just mention as well is for the cash. Now, the cash was a little bit tricky because you've got opening cash, which is, just opening cash as per the opening cash in the balance sheet. And then we bring forward the opening cash, or the closing cash becomes the opening cash in period 1, add on whatever cash flows are generated, and we get the closing cash for period 1, and so on across the page. Pretty normal. The difficulty here is that, your closing, my opening cash would normally be the closing cash from the period before. So, but my cash flow is generated using, all the data that comes in from the financial model to give me my net cash flows. I add that onto my opening cash and I get a closing cash balance, which then feeds up into the balance sheet. But then this formula here is looking at the balance sheet to generate the opening cash. So effectively we're getting like a bit of a circular reference. So the only way to really, the SUMIFS effectively handle that, because I don't actually have a circular reference, because I'm always looking back at the period before. So my SUMIFS effectively take care of eliminating that circular reference to give me the opening balance. But because it's effectively referring to itself, like we do actually, Excel thinks there is a circular reference. So the way I handled that was just to go into your, file options, formulas, and turn on the iterative calculations. So in here, formulas and just switch on enable iterative calculations. And that basically allows the model to calculate as normal without, without generating, circular reference errors.
Very cool.
So, yeah, that's basically in overview what it's all about. We can make a copy of the file available. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of show that because I've not really, seen too many people do this before, and I thought it was a really interesting experiment to make these formulas copy across and down. And of course, when you go back to your setup page and you make changes to, if I add a new product in here, maybe I'd like to XLOOKUP mug. Add a new product in here, probably, be selling, at least 10,000 of those a month. What should be the price for an XLOOKUP mug? I know it's, invaluable, but
I think $99.99.
$99.99. All right, done. 99. This is in AUD, I take it. And I'm going to copy that down. We don't want Audacy, whatever that is. 10% increase, price increase, 5%, GP margin. Wow, who knows, whatever. So as soon as we put that in, you then see this in my financial model being calculated all the way through as well. So when I scroll down here, there's the XLOOKUP mug in my number of sales units. It's down here in my unit pricing, my FX rates, and then the sales are automatically being generated. That then feeds into my total sales, my cost of goods sold, basically just by adding one thing into the table, like it adds it to every single place in the model it needs to be. And that would be the same with your staffing, be the same with you needed a new exchange rate. If you added new, CapEx into your, different purchases down here for all of your CapEx, different items you buy. Obviously, if you add, too many, it's not going to work because it's going to give you a spill error. So you'd have to just come back in here and add some more rows. As soon as you add more rows, the spill error goes away. That's what you're about to ask me, isn't it?
I am. I love the ability to insert anywhere. And
the
formulas just spill.
So you can insert in the middle here, it doesn't matter. It just pushes everything down, so it doesn't mess up your formulas in the middle.
Yeah, that is so nice.
Really
you
cool.
can just insert wherever you want.
Yep.
So you don't have to get sometimes you insert and the formatting then takes the row above or the row below. Just insert in the middle and everything just pushes down. You don't have to drag any formulas. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. Yep. So dynamic arrays, fantastic for financial modeling. Does require a bit more thought and effort, I must say. It took me a while to figure this out. It's a relatively simple model. Awesome. But, I think it's worth it because, you change one number in terms of your number of periods and they can extend it out to as many columns as Excel has available. So, pretty cool.
We're always interested in anybody who's got any suggestions or improvements. Can we avoid the circular reference? Have you got some fancy other techniques you're using? So, again, leave those in the comments and we'll be really keen to hear what people think. So,
absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. That is really
Thanks,
good.
Ben.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I shall catch you later on. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.